Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. LSU in spring practice. There's probably not a program across the country that is generating more buzz than LSU. And look, I get it. I'm reading spring practice notes for, most of the programs across the country. At this point in spring practice, it's kind of all positive news coming out. But for LSU specifically, it's positive news at the positions that were some of the biggest concerns for LSU going into 2025. There's a couple of things that stand out. One, it sounds like LSU, with all these red names that we see in the two deep, there's a lot of confidence that LSU has hit in a big way with some of these transfer portal additions. And I think, secondly, at the positions that we have question marks about, you're starting to hear some really good spring practice buzz coming out of those positions. Want to talk about a few of the storylines before we do, and as always, the LSU fans, appreciate you guys. It's been really fun talking this football team the last couple of weeks and months. A lot of buzz in the transfer portal, a lot of buzz on the high school recruiting trail. We've broken down a lot of commitments for LSU over the last couple of weeks, and then spring practice. There's been plenty to talk about. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I want to start with just some general thoughts about what I'm hearing regarding LSU, and I think it's most notably this spring practice session for LSU has been really physical. I mean, they're already jumping into some 11-on-11 scrimmages. The full pads are coming on. You take a look at the LSU social media page. This is a physical spring practice session for LSU, and that's different. A little bit of a different tune, you might say, than how we talked about LSU the last couple of years, where they had some serious depth issues and they couldn't really go all that physical in spring practice because you kind of had to bubble wrap a lot of these players because the depth on this football team was not very good. I mean, at a couple of positions over the last couple of years, LSU was an injury away from really being in a bad spot. Because of the depth that you see on this football team, it's allowing Brian Kelly and LSU to get a little bit better work, get a little bit more competitive during spring practice, which I think intrigues me a lot about LSU. And then secondly, you're hearing a lot of really good things about the new faces that are not only coming into this program through the transfer portal and as true freshmen, but some new faces in terms of guys that haven't played a ton for LSU over the last couple of years that are kind of emerging as being difference makers going into 2025. And it starts with the offensive line. There's something really intriguing going on with this LSU offensive line, and that is, yes, you lose Will Campbell, you lose Emory Jones, you lose pretty much this whole offensive line that was here in 2024. With all that being said, and this is not a shot at that 2024 offensive line. It was a very good unit. You're starting to hear some buzz that this offensive line is a little bit more physical than the one in 2024. And look, that's a step you want to see LSU take, where you go back to 2024, they only ran the football 40% of the time. That was 127th in the country, and you only averaged 4.1 yards per carry. That was 76th. As good as this LSU offensive line was in the 2024 year, they didn't run the football the way I think a lot of LSU fans expected them to in the 2024 season. And then what you're hearing out of this LSU offensive line in 2025, yeah, maybe we have some more question marks about pass protection, specifically at the offensive tackle position. You are hearing a lot of good things about how LSU is going to be able to run the football in 2025. And why is that such a big storyline? Well, one, I think you have one of the better running backs in the conference in Caden Durham going into year two. But just as importantly, you give Garrett Nussmeier a better run game. That's going to help him out tremendously at the quarterback spot. He threw 10 touchdowns to 1 interception off play action last year. Now, LSU couldn't utilize play action as much as they wanted because they didn't really stick to the run game. If LSU runs the football better in 2025, which does not sound like a crazy statement to say with what we're hearing out of spring practice, allowing Garrett Nussmeier to work a little bit more play action, you could see Garrett Nussmeier take a step too. That's massive for Garrett Nussmeier and what he could look like in the 2025 year. Now, the guy stepping out, I mean, Tyree Adams at left tackle, it sounds like there's some really good things coming out with Tyree Adams. And then on the other side, it's Weston Davis. Now, what stands out is there's a lot of options at the tackle position. You're hearing Josh Thompson, who just got to LSU. He's getting some work at right tackle. Y'all know how I feel about Carius Kern. The question marks for LSU on the offensive line, I think we're a little bit overblown, because on the surface, it's like, oh, we're losing a lot of really good football players, a lot of new faces coming into this lineup. I got question marks. But they've recruited the position really well. They've developed the position really well. There's a lot of capable bodies for LSU on the offensive line. I don't think it's nearly the concern that we had 4 weeks ago heading into spring practice. Now, number two, the pass rush sounds to maybe be taking a step going into the 2025 year, which another thing that's kind of crazy to say when you lose Braden Swinson, Savion Jones, guys that were really good rushing the passer off the edge. Now it starts with Pat Payton and Jack Pyburn, both of which, especially Jack Pyburn, you're hearing some really good things from. What about the young cats? Especially a guy like Gabriel Relaford. Now, he's not the flashy name like Patrick Payton and Jack Pyburn is, because he's not a transfer portal addition, but this is a guy that, for the LSU fans who watch this team closely, he flashed as a true freshman. He sounds like he's the best edge rusher coming out of spring practice right now. And so I look at LSU's defensive line and say it was a really underrated pass rush unit last year. And the question was, losing your two top guys in Braden Swinson and Savion Jones, can we maintain that level of pass rush in 2025? I'm looking at it and saying it doesn't sound like it's all that crazy to say that this LSU pass rush will at least be as good as it was in 2024. And if not better, if you get some development from the inside of the defensive line, which was kind of non-existent for LSU in the pass rush department. Don McKinley going into year two, Ahmad Bro going into year two. I'm intrigued by what you're hearing from LSU on both sides of the line of scrimmage. The third one is the secondary, and this I feel so confident will be way better than it was in the 2024 year. I was very vocal. They just didn't have the personnel to do what Blake Baker wanted to do in 2024. They have completely revamped it. Now you're hearing some really good things. I think where it starts is you have players playing in the positions they should be playing. Javion Toviano going back to safety. That is where he should have played from the jump, was kind of forced to have to play some different positions because of the lack of depth in the secondary. So you're getting some young players back into the positions they probably should have been in to begin with. You're hearing some really good things from Mansour Delane. Really good things from Jakeem Jackson, really good things from DJ Pickett, really good things from Deshaun Spears, who's going into year two very well, could start at safety for LSU. The safety position is significantly more athletic than it was in the 2024 year. You have guys that can hold up in coverage. Then you look at the cornerback position and say, all right, between Mansour Delane, DJ Pickett, Jakeem Jackson, Ashton Stance, PJ Woodland, those are five guys that we have a lot of confidence in. Well, you got to find two that can go start. I feel pretty confident that LSU significantly better at the cornerback position from the new faces and development of some of the young guys in that room. This is, to me, the biggest storyline for LSU is that secondary wasn't good enough from a personnel standpoint last year. It sounds like it's gone from a weakness from LSU in 2024 to potentially a strength in 2025. And it's kind of how we're talking about LSU at a couple of different positions, because the last thing you want to talk about is the pass catchers. There's a lot of buzz around these LSU pass catchers coming out of spring practice so far. Now, it starts with a guy like Barry Brown, who I think has the chance, especially in this LSU offense where it is the definition of a perfect fit. I thought Barry Brown was one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in the transfer portal in the winter. He went to LSU where it's just the ideal fit for his skill set. He's going to be your wide receiver one. You have Aaron Anderson, who's one of the more, my brother has him as an All-American in the 2024, going into 2025. Aaron Anderson can play. You're hearing some really good things about Xavier Thomas too. A guy that is really, really juiced up with the football in his hands. And what does LSU like to do the most? Hey, we want to get our pass catchers out in space. Barry Brown, Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, those guys are super dynamic with the football in their hands. Then you also have your vertical guys, Nick Anderson, Chris Hilton Jr. Hearing some really good things about both Bauer Sharp and Trey'Dez Green. Bauer Sharp, a new face that I loved when LSU grabbed him. Trey'Dez Green, we could see a monster step from him going into year two of his college football career. Left the basketball team kind of full go for spring practice. I guess the take with LSU right now is excuse me, the question marks that we had around this LSU team, specifically on the offensive line, those seem to be melting away. They don't seem to be as big a question marks as we thought they were 4 weeks ago. And then at the positions we were looking to get better in, the secondary, the pass catcher room, it sounds like LSU significantly better in. And so you look at top to bottom and say this LSU team seems to be improved at almost every position on the football field from what was a really good team in 2024, right? It was maybe not the expectations that LSU fans had, but this team was not far away from, competing for an SEC championship. And now you're telling me they're just significantly better at a couple of different spots and seem to be answering the questions we have. This is what you look for when you have top end talent, which LSU certainly does, and then you have a complete roster with very little question marks. That's the recipe to not only being a really good team, but being an elite team, not only in the SEC but across the country. To the non-LSU fans who might be checking this out, trying to get some intel on LSU, I'd buy stock in this LSU team because you're hearing all the right things coming out of spring ball. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.